Welcome back to the Bitcoin Layer. This is Joe Consorti. We're here in Washington, D.C. Once again, I'm here with a longtime friend of the show, Mr. Alex Thorn, the head of research at Galaxy. Alex, how you doing?
Joe, I'm great. Thanks for having me. Great to be back on the Bitcoin Layer.
Absolutely. Very excited for it. In-person episode. Very excited to be doing it with you.
Rare. Actually, never. First time, I should say.
Indeed, first time.
Great.
We may have uploaded a few before this, but for me, first time.
Yeah.
And here's to many more. One day, Nick and I will get a studio out now. One day. So we're here at the Policy Summit put on by the Bitcoin Policy Institute. Wonderful event, second annual. You just delivered a keynote tying Bitcoin to America, Bitcoin values being American values.
Yeah, I did. And it is a great event, by the way. Shout out to the Bitcoin Policy Institute. You know, some people don't know this, but one of the most powerful bank lobby organizations is also called the BPI, the Bank Policy Institute. It's the chairman of that is Jamie Dimon.
We're stealing the acronym.
Head of JP Morgan. Yeah, we are. We're co-opting it.
Hold that thought. The Bitcoin Layer is sponsored by River. River is our Bitcoin exchange of choice. Why is that? Well, they have best-in-class Bitcoin services. You can securely buy Bitcoin with zero fees when you set up recurring orders, and you can have peace of mind knowing that your Bitcoin is held in one-to-one multi-sig cold storage custody. It's not lent out. You can withdraw it at any time. And if you need help, they have US-based phone supports for all of their clients. And also, they recently introduced a feature called River Link, which allows you to text Bitcoin to anybody, and it can be claimed to any wallet. This makes it easier than ever to orange pill your friends, your family members, pay people when you go out for dinner, give a gift, etc. Try them out today at river.com/TBL and get up to $100 when you sign up and buy Bitcoin. And now on with the show.
I took the opportunity and to talk about how Bitcoin values are American values. They openness, that humans in general have an inherent freedom to transact. This is a fact. We know this for millennia. You could walk up to somebody and say, nice sword. Like, what do you think about this helmet? Should we swap or whatever? Like, meet on the Silk Road, the real Silk Road, to Asia, yeah. Right? Like, and that this is a fundamental human behavior. It doesn't require authority, right? We naturally have this ability, and flowing from the freedom to transact are other major freedoms: the freedom of speech, the freedom to incorporate, the freedom of assembly. These things are all tied together. Right? If you produce some kind of good on your homestead, on your farm, like, you obviously have the ability to trade that with somebody else for some. That's always been true, and we've been able to do that directly, right, in a peer-to-peer fashion. And yet, strangely, for some reason, that innate human ability to transact, that freedom to transact without the use of an intermediary, did not transpose to the digital systems that we have pervasive in the world today. Right? We have digital dollars and fintech apps, but they're just a veneer on the existing legacy system, right? Which itself is built on this interlocking web of intermediaries and gatekeepers. And they do gatekeep. They don't just gatekeep criminals. There are, around the world, from totalitarian dictatorships to liberal democracies, these gatekeepers have interfered with the right and freedom to transact of their own citizens, in many cases when no local law has been committed, and that, but that has been the state of play. There had been no way to transact, utilizing, again, the innate human freedom to transact in the digital world until Bitcoin. And so I argue that, first of all, America is founded on the liberal values of property rights and freedom and individual liberty and openness, and that Bitcoin is an embodiment of those, and that people who think that, while Bitcoin's price is obviously related to the prudence or imprudence of the dollar's monetary policies, people who say that a vote for Bitcoin is somehow damaging to American power, they're just not accurate. That you can both promote America and Bitcoin at the same time, and indeed that's what we should be doing, and that's what I argued.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. American values are Bitcoin values. For us here in America, I think the reason many people will buy Bitcoin is because of the runaway monetary and fiscal situation. The fact that we're now running 113% debt to GDP, projected to be 200 by 2050. We'll probably arrive there much sooner. But also, you touch on property, and I think that's something that a lot of people will ignore when they look at Bitcoin. They think about price and only price. How unique are Bitcoin's property rights as an asset? Are there any other assets in the universe that enable what Bitcoin does on the scale that it does?
They're incredibly unique, right? I mean, your property rights are cryptographic by definition. They're protected by mathematics, and they're powerful maths there at work. Sure. Look, I mean, digital assets that are based on cryptography and carried on open, permissionless blockchain ledgers, broadly as a category, have these features, right? The ones that aren't Bitcoin, to the extent that they're similar, learned it from Bitcoin, but I would argue that there are none with the guarantees as strong as Bitcoin. And that is unbelievably powerful. It's game changing. I mean, think about this. The DTCC, which effectively is, I don't know what the exact, they're not the custodian, they're the centralized ledger of record for all stock certificates in the US, right? This is a centralized repository. When you sell an equity at your brokerage firm and it's paired with the buy from me at my brokerage firm, they're not like mailing the physical certificate across the street, right? They basically mark the ownership up at the DTCC. But this organization was created to solve a specific problem. In the 60s, there was a thing called the paperwork crisis. On Wall Street, it was, right, the economy was booming, it was post-war era, post-World War II era, massive explosion in investment on Wall Street. But it was so bad that 25% of all the brokerages went out of business simply because they couldn't stay on top of the paper, because there was no repository for the ledger for stock trades. So literally, like, Wall Street brokerages were like sending by courier physical stock certificates across the street to settle, like, with other brokerage firms. And there also was no bilateral netting. So, like, if you bought 500 and I sold 500, we didn't just say, you know what, like, that's a wash. We'll just update Joe's certificates here and Alex's over here. They, like, swapped the two sets of 50 shares, and they were getting lost in puddles and piled up on desks. It was so bad that the New York Stock Exchange closed every Wednesday at noon. They cut 4 hours out of the weekly trading schedule just to give brokerages time to catch up halfway through the week. 25% of brokers went out of business simply due to operational overhead during this time. So they said, well, let's centralize this and it'll be much more efficient. And that became what is now known as the DTCC. It was an innovative solution, centralization, to solve for inefficiency. But obviously the natural state was to interact directly. Why should you have to involve a third party if broker A was just trading with broker B? We should be able to solve that. We didn't possess the technology. Public blockchains are an obvious solution to that. So to your point about property rights, I mean, Bitcoin is exceptional at tracking and effectuating the transfer of digital ownership. That's what it does at its core. You can also do things like proof of reserves, which are not possible with traditional assets. There's no way for Fidelity or Schwab or TD to prove that they have my Apple stock, right? It's basically impossible. You just trust them, basically. It mostly works. There are edge cases where it hasn't, but it always works when it comes to Bitcoin. So it is a powerful network for property rights, and it's a technology that's never existed before.
Extremely well said. Very American indeed. And I think a lot of people, I've been thinking about this since the ETFs launched. I think a lot of people are looking at Bitcoin and they come into Bitcoin for the price exposure. They see that this is the best absolute returning asset year to date and the best risk-adjusted return asset year to date. Do you think that some of those ETF investors are coming for the price exposure and then staying for the property rights?
It's a great question. I mean, to be clear, owning Bitcoin directly, you have much stronger property rights than owning it in an ETP. But I will say, I mean, they are trusts. Like, you actually do own the underlying, legally speaking, in the United States, the underlying, if you own ETF shares, ETP shares, from a legal perspective. But of course, now you're involving the legal system to guarantee those property rights. And we do have strong property rights in the United States. I mean, among the best. It's one of the reasons we have the best and deepest capital markets in the world, is because of our property rights and our rule of law. So those are good. And they're about as good as you can get in any type of legally codified property right in the United States. But again, Bitcoin has better property rights than even that, right? I mean, because we don't need the law to tell us. I mean, if you hold the keys, you hold the coins. To your question directly, though, I don't know. I think in general, come for the price and stay for the revolution is a thing that many people who have gotten interested in Bitcoin have gone through. It's a reasonable way to get interested in Bitcoin. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I do hope that people realize the truly transformational nature of Bitcoin as an asset, and obviously powered by the Bitcoin network. There's no other asset in the world or in the universe. I mean, well, who knows? The big universe. Maybe someone else created like Bitcoin or something, and on some other planet it's possible. But when you secure property rights with cryptography and distributed consensus and a wide resilient network of nodes and ledger appenders, validators, or miners, however you want to describe it. That's one of them. I think it's the most well known. It's the only known way to secure property rights at global scale that humanity's ever known. And that relies on no intermediary. I hope they come for if they come for the price, I hope they stay for the revolutionary nature overall.
That's the hope. That's the hope, at least in the long term. So then that begs the question: if the United States is the most free country on earth, which is a verifiable fact, and we have the best property rights globally, and the way that they're enshrined, what are we doing right with Bitcoin policy, and what are we doing wrong? Like, what could we be improving on in order to ensure that, we're fostering an environment where capital allocators aren't leaving the United States in order to pursue Bitcoin endeavors, but they're staying here?
Federalism is working great, right? States choose different policies and they enact them, and if some are good, then maybe they bubble to the surface, and if some are bad, maybe they dissipate over time. I think that's working great in the United States. There's plenty of places in the U.S. that have favorable, if we think about Bitcoin mining, favorable energy policies, favorable electrical grids, favorable political environments for Bitcoin. There are some that aren't as good, which is okay. I grew up in Massachusetts. I've been reading about how, and I recall growing up, how dismal the electrical grid situation is in Massachusetts. It's like shocking. That
was a good pun.
Every big nor'easter, they call it, big winter storm, there's actually a risk of a widespread outage. I don't really recall seeing that, but apparently it's getting worse and worse. So not a great place for electricity resiliency. Actually, maybe they should have some Bitcoin mining if it wasn't so opaque.
If it wasn't 14 cents a kilowatt hour.
Exactly, and too expensive. Well, what would drive it down is some transparency in the electrical production, right? Yeah. But a lot of these grids are monolithic in there and effectively monopolized by government to one organization, right? We had EverSource was a big one that I remember using when I lived in Massachusetts. There's Duke Energy Progress in a lot of the South. Like, no idea what the actual cost of electricity is. You do see on your bill what you end up getting charged, but you don't know if is that a high rate? Is it a low rate? Was it efficient? Was there bidding? No way to know that. A grid like ERCOT is very, very transparent by definition. That's a huge benefit for Bitcoin mining. Stepping back, as a nation, I think the biggest thing we can do is just not screw it up. We're the largest holder of Bitcoin as people, but I think the U.S. government also may be the largest single known entity to hold Bitcoin. We have the biggest intellectual forces in Bitcoin are American and are in the United States. We align on mining, on property rights, on values. It's very obvious that we could just not screw it up and probably and maintain our lead as the leading nation in Bitcoin. There are some things we could do to screw it up that would be really bad. I think anything around making it impossible or difficult for individuals to operate on the Bitcoin network is a pretty straightforward one. There have been proposals in Congress and in the Senate to impose bank-like AML and KYC requirements on people that code software, operate software, use software to compute data. These would effectively ban Bitcoin in America, but let's be real, we'd be banning America from Bitcoin. It's not going to work to stop Bitcoin, right? You'd just be removing us from it. Anything along the lines of making it hard to develop, own, transact, run a node, right, mine Bitcoin is a big loser in my mind that would do more harm to America than Bitcoin in the long run. So let's hope we don't do that. We work to educate and advocate that we don't do that.
Absolutely. And in the vein of educating and advocating, to close this out, what's the message you want to leave viewers with? Obviously, you're on the show quite often. Today, we've taken the property rights angle, the Bitcoin being very American angle. From an education standpoint, where would you send people? What would you encourage people to do in order to learn more about this so they can advocate for it?
There's an enormous amount of resources at this point. BitcoinLayer is a great one for learning about Bitcoin and its impact in the world, but also on markets. I think it's a huge, interesting question is what should we be owning, as investors and individuals who want to protect the value of our labor. If you look at real rates and the price of gold, they've just dramatically diverged since COVID. After literally decades of positive correlation, now they're negatively correlated. People are selling U.S. government debt and they're buying gold around the world. This is a very common thing. You have to ask yourself, why is that? Why would people want to get rid of gold Get rid of U.S. government debt and acquire gold, even though they used to basically be part of the same trade. Why is that? Why do people think that the United States government debt is a sell and gold is a buy? Gold, you can't do anything with gold. It's giant, it's heavy.
No cash flows.
No cash flows, it's taxable. Treasuries don't get taxed, right? You trade treasuries. Is that true? I'm pretty sure that's true. They're tax-free. So, I mean, it seems crazy, but like that just shows how the market has made a clear view now that it's no longer just iconic doomsaying gold bugs that are saying buy gold, don't buy government debt. The market is reaching a consensus that there's something deeply wrong with the American government's fiscal situation. And look, we want to fix that. I'm advocating to fix that, but I only see two ways out of that: massive tax increases coupled with spending cuts, or crippling inflation. And in the first one, it appears to be extremely politically unlikely to ever occur. It needs to occur. I mean, I therefore hope it occurs, but it will cause a lot of pain if it does. And the other one, crippling inflation, I mean, you could inflate your way out of this debt, right? You just print money to use to pay off the debt, but that will collapse the value of the dollar. And so what would you hold in those times, right? Either something where you're being taxed and getting no services to an incredible degree, or something where the unit of account that you use to run your daily life is becoming worthless. In both cases, to me, something that is global, scarce, decentralized, has strong property rights that you can guarantee yourself without any intermediary, look extremely attractive. Bitcoin is that clear answer. So, look into it.
Look into it. Extremely well said. Correlations are shifting. It's your job to learn about why they're shifting and insulate yourself from its impact. Alex Thorn, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Joe.
Where can people find you?
Check me out on Twitter, Intangible Coins. Check out Galaxy Research, GLXY Research on Twitter, or galaxy.com/research.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And remember to subscribe to the Bitcoin Layer and hit the notification bell so you get notified whenever we post new videos just like this one. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks. And once again, a special thanks to River for sponsoring not only this show, but all of our shows here at the Bitcoin Layer. They are our Bitcoin exchange of choice. You can securely buy Bitcoin with zero fees on recurring orders, have peace of mind thanks to their one-to-one multi-sig cold storage custody, and withdraw at any time. And if you need any help, they have US-based phone support for all clients. And they have a feature called River Link, which allows you to send Bitcoin over a text message that can be claimed to any wallet. It's never been easier to orange pill your friends, family members, give a gift, pay somebody else for dinner. You guys, check out River today using our link, river.com/TBL, and get up to $100 when you sign up and buy Bitcoin. Once again, thanks to River, and thank you for watching to the end. We'll see you soon.